The great council hall of Ardentis Prime stood like a jewel of light in the center of the galaxy. Its walls were alive with shifting colors, glowing softly like the heart of a star. Hundreds of alien delegates filled the chamber, each one a representative of an ancient and powerful civilization. Their voices blended together in a low storm of sound hisses, clicks, growls, and musical tones unlike anything heard on Earth. For the first time in history, humanity had a seat among them. And yet, instead of welcome, there was doubt. Captain Mara Ellison, chosen to represent Earth and its small fleet, stood at the far edge of the chamber. She was tall, her uniform crisp, her dark hair tied back in a braid. Her eyes, sharp and unyielding, swept across the sea of alien faces. Some were insect-like, with glittering shells that reflected the light. Others were ghostly, made of pale, shifting mist. Some towered with wings folded close to their bodies. All of them older, stronger, more advanced than humanity, and all of them watching her as though she did not belong. The karate envoy, a towering insectoid with golden mandibles, clicked them sharply as he spoke. His voice echoed like metal striking stone. "Humans," he said, "are reckless. They leap into danger without reason. They burn bright and die quickly. They are not fit for war among the stars." The chamber rumbled with agreement. From the shadows drifted the Keshe envoy, a being of flowing black mist wrapped in dark robes. Its voice was slow and cold. "Your species lives short lives. You rush because you are fragile. Against the coming storm, the humans will be the first to fall." The storm they spoke of had a name: the Ravagers. They were a species feared. Across the galaxy, conquerors who devoured planets and left nothing behind. Already, they had broken through 3 border systems. Even the great fleets of the Alliance struggled to contain them. The Chancellor of the Council, a tall creature with 4 glowing eyes and clawed hands, raised his arm for silence. "Humanity is new to our alliance," he said. His voice was deep and heavy, carrying the weight of centuries. "You have joined us only recently, and your fleets are small. We will not risk valuable ships in reckless human hands. Your role, for now, will remain defensive. You will stay close to your home systems." There was murmuring again, soft and sharp. Some nodded in approval, others ignored the humans completely. To them, Earth was nothing more than a minor world at the edge of known space. A weak species lucky to even sit in this hall. Mara's jaw tightened, but her face remained calm. Inside, however, a fire burned. She knew how the galaxy saw her people. Fragile mammals, short-lived, primitive. But she also knew what they did not understand. Humans had survived countless disasters on Earth. Plagues, wars, earthquakes, storms that ripped cities apart. They had survived not because they were the strongest, but because they refused to give up. Taking a single step forward, Mara let her voice cut through the whispers. "Inexperienced," she said, her words steady and sharp, "does not mean incapable." The chamber fell into silence for a brief moment. Alien eyes turned toward her, some glittering with amusement, some narrowing with irritation. To most of them, her words were meaningless. The karate envoy let out a clicking laugh. "When the Ravagers come, Captain, we will see how long your kind survives." Mara met his gaze without flinching. She did not argue further. She knew it would be useless. Words alone could not change centuries of arrogance. Only actions could. The Chancellor waved a clawed hand, ending the session. "This meeting is closed. The Alliance fleets will prepare for the coming threat. Humanity will remain in reserve." One by one, the alien delegates left the glowing hall. Some ignored Mara completely. Others glanced at her with pity or disdain. She stood alone at the far side, her fists clenched at her sides, as the chamber emptied. Mara walked slowly toward the tall crystal doors. She kept her head high, but inside her heart was heavy. She had seen the arrogance in their eyes, the way they dismissed humanity. They thought of Earth as weak, its people as fragile sparks that would soon burn out. But they did not know the truth. Humanity's history was not one of comfort, but of survival. Humans had been underestimated before, by their own empires, by their own wars, by the forces of nature itself, and every time they had found a way to endure. Mara stepped out into the wide streets of Ardentis Prime. The city stretched like a dream, towers of crystal and metal rising into the sky, floating platforms glowing with energy, alien ships soaring overhead like flocks of silver birds. To most humans, it would have been breathtaking. To Mara, it was a reminder of how far Earth still had to go and how much they had to prove. She looked up at the stars above. Somewhere out there, the Ravagers were moving. Somewhere out there, battles were already being lost. And when the time came, the Alliance would see what humanity could truly do. Mara whispered to herself, her voice barely audible beneath the hum of the alien city. They think we are predictable. They think we are weak. But they have never seen what humans can do when the fire is at their backs. And with that thought, she returned to her ship. The Resolute awaited her, a vessel smaller than most, but carrying a crew who shared her fire. They too had seen the Council's doubt, and they too burned with the same determination. Together, they would face the storm, because humanity was never strongest in peace. They were strongest in chaos. The alarms of the Alliance echoed across the stars. Vera, Ix, a lush world of forests and oceans, had come under sudden attack. Its defenses crumbled within hours, its orbital stations burning like falling stars. The Ravagers had arrived with terrifying speed. From orbit, the sight was horrifying. Great black warships, shaped like blades and fangs, cut through the sky. Their weapons poured fire into the cities below. The Alliance fleets, though larger and stronger, struggled to hold them back. Their formations were perfect, their movements calculated, but against the Ravagers. Those very patterns became traps. Captain Mara Ellison stood on the bridge of the Resolute, watching the chaos unfold on the tactical display. She clenched her fists behind her back, her eyes fixed on the holograms of burning ships around her. Her officers waited in tense silence. "Report," she ordered quietly. Lieutenant Arjun Patel, the ship's tactical officer, replied. "Alliance fleets are falling back. Captain, the karate squadrons are retreating in formation. The Keishe Phantoms have already withdrawn. Casualties are high." His voice shook with suppressed anger. Mara's jaw tightened. Of course, she thought bitterly. The Alliance ships were powerful, but their strategies never changed. They retreated in neat lines, attacked in symmetrical waves, and moved like chess pieces on a board. The Ravagers had learned those moves long ago. A new voice crackled over the comms. Admiral Torak of the Ilarian fleet. His deep voice carried disdain even through static. "Human vessel Resolute, you are ordered to remain behind our lines. Do not interfere. You will only add wreckage to orbit." On the bridge, silence fell. Mara could feel the eyes of her crew on her. She could feel their pride stinging at the insult. She pressed the comms button calmly. "Admiro Tohaki," she said, her voice level but firm. "Earth will not stand idle while the world burns. Your interference will doom us all." Torak snapped. "Stay out of the way, human." The channel went dead. For a long moment, the only sound was the hum of the engines. Then Arjun spoke, his voice low but filled with fire. "They want us to hide while the Ravagers destroy everything. Captain, we can't." Mara turned to him. His dark eyes burned with the same defiance she felt in her own chest. Around him, the rest of the crew nodded silently. They were young, compared to the ancient admirals, untested, compared to the legendary fleets, but they were human, and humans had never been the type to wait quietly for permission. Mara stepped forward, her voice strong. "Helm, bring us closer to Vera. Weapons, prepare a full spread. Tactical plot, a course not around them, but through them. The crew stared at her in shock. Through them, Captain. Yes, she said. Scatter us. Break formation. Move like a storm. Unpredictable, violent, everywhere at once. For a heartbeat, no one moved. It was madness. No Alliance commander would ever give such an order. Battles to them were about order and control. But Mara's voice carried a certainty that pushed aside their doubts. Do it, she commanded. The Resolute surged forward. Its escort ships followed, diving into the debris field. Instead of neat lines and careful maneuvers, the human ships scattered in wild, chaotic bursts. They weaved between wreckage, looped around burning hulks, and even pretended to spiral out of control before striking with sudden, savage precision. The Ravagers noticed immediately. Used two fleets that moved like puzzles, they suddenly faced enemies that broke every rule. Their sensors predicted where ships should be, but the humans were never there. Their weapons targeted logical escape routes, but the humans never took them. Missiles screamed out from the Resolute. They didn't aim for ships directly. Instead, they detonated in empty space, in asteroid fields, even inside wreckage. The explosions forced the Ravagers to break formation. Colliding with one another in the confusion, the bridge of the Resolute shook violently as return fire ripped past. Sparks flew from the ceiling, and the lights flickered. But Mara stood steady, her hands gripping the command rail. Keep pushing, she shouted. Don't give them a pattern to follow. Arjun grinned through the chaos, his voice fierce. They can't read us. The skies above Vera the Ninth still burned. Pieces of broken warships drifted like glowing ashes in the void, painting the black canvas of space with fire and ruin. The great fleets of the Alliance had withdrawn to regroup, their perfect arcs carrying them to safety. Only the human ships remained in the thick of the storm. On the bridge of the Resolute, Captain Mara Ellison stood at the command rail, her eyes locked on the shifting chaos ahead. Her ship was battered, its hull scarred from enemy fire, but still alive. Around her, the crew moved quickly, their voices sharp and urgent, yet filled with something stronger than fear, something like pride. Lieutenant Arjun Patel leaned over his console, his fingers flying across the glowing screen. Captain, we've scattered their lines, but they're regrouping fast. The Ravagers don't like disorder. They're trying to reform their patterns. Mara's lips pressed into a thin line. The Ravagers were like predators that hunted with perfect rhythm. Break that rhythm, and they stumbled, but only for a moment. If they recovered, the Alliance would lose again. We can't give them time to breathe, Mara said firmly. If they find order, they'll crush us. We need to keep them in chaos. The crew exchanged glances. To most species, chaos was terrifying. Disorder meant death. But to humans, chaos was something familiar. Earth had always been full of storms, quakes, floods, and wars that struck without warning. To survive, there was to dance with uncertainty. Helm, Mara ordered, her voice steady. Take us right into the heart of their formation. Don't dodge the danger, become the danger. The helmsman hesitated only a moment before nodding. Engines roared, and the Resolute surged forward, diving into the swarm of Ravager ships. The enemy responded instantly. Black warships turned, their fangs glowing with lethal energy. Beams of light slashed across space. The Resolute twisted violently, rolling between streams of fire, sliding through explosions so close that the hull groaned with the shock. To any watching alien, it looked like madness. To Mara's crew, it was a dance. Bring us around, hard. To port, Mara shouted. Weapons, fire, not at the ship's fire, at the space between them. Missiles streaked out, detonating in empty voids. The blasts forced the Ravagers to scatter, cutting them off from one another. The perfect lines of attack that had broken so many fleets before now dissolved into fragments. One Ravager cruiser lunged at the Resolute, spewing fire. At the last moment, Mara barked, dive under it. The ship plunged downward, skimming dangerously close to the cruiser's belly. Arjun grinned fiercely as he triggered the cannons. Explosions tore across the Ravager's underhull, a weak spot no logical strategy would ever have exposed. Direct hit, Arjun shouted, his voice triumphant. Another escort ship. The Valar spun wildly like a broken toy, only to suddenly accelerate and smash missiles into an unsuspecting Ravager frigate. Two outsiders. It looked accidental. To the humans, it was. Calculated chaos. From the sidelines of the battle, the Alliance watched in disbelief. Commanders who had sneered at humanity before now stared wide-eyed at their displays. "They're not fighting with strategy," whispered one Alarian admiral. "They're fighting with madness," another answered. "No," said a quiet Keshe shadow, its voice slow and thoughtful. "Not madness, adaptation." Back on the Resolute, the fight raged. The bridge shook again and again, sparks flying, alarms screaming, but the crew never faltered. Mara's calm voice guided them through the storm. "Roll us through that wreckage. Use it as cover. Split the escorts left and right, make them chase ghosts. Fire everything we have at those engines, make them crash into each other." Every order defied logic, and every order worked. Ravager ships collided, their precision torn apart by the whirlwind of unpredictable moves. Yet the cost was heavy. One of the escorts, the Endeavor, took a direct hit. Its hull split open, fire spilling into space. Mara's chest tightened as she saw the ship drift, powerless. "Rescue pods," she demanded. Launching, Arjun said quickly. His voice trembled with grief. "But we've lost her, Captain." Mara closed her eyes for a brief moment. The crew of the Endeavor had known the risk. They had chosen to fight when the galaxy would have left them in the shadows. Their sacrifice would not be in vain. Her eyes opened again, burning with determination. "Then we make sure they are remembered. Push forward." The Resolute dove deeper into the chaos. Ravager fire tore around them, but the ship danced between it, unpredictable as a storm. Every move was reckless, every strike unexpected. To the Ravagers, it was like trying to fight fire with logic. At last, the enemy line faltered. Ships drifted apart, no longer in control. For the first time, the Ravagers hesitated. And in that hesitation, humanity struck hard. Explosions filled the void, Ravager vessels tearing apart in bursts of light. Their perfect formations, the weapon they had used to dominate the galaxy, were gone. The humans had turned the battle into fire and madness, and, in that fire, they were alive. Silence settled for a moment on the bridge. The crew looked around, their faces pale and sweat-soaked, but their eyes bright with something stronger than exhaustion, pride. Arjun broke the silence, his voice rough but certain. "Captain, they don't understand us. They never will." Mara stood tall, her gaze on the burning horizon of space. "Good," she said quietly. "That is our strength." And as the wreckage of broken Ravager ships drifted around them, the humans of the Resolute knew this battle was only the beginning. They had danced in the fire, and they had not burned. The Battle of Vera the Ninth had ended in silence. Ravager ships drifted like broken shadows across the void. The planet was scarred, its orbital defenses shattered, but it still lived. That alone was a victory. For the Alliance, however, there was confusion. Their fleets had not saved Vera, the humans had. Days later, the council hall of Ardentis Prime was filled once more. Its crystal walls glowed faintly, though this time the light seemed softer, more uncertain. Delegates of 100 species gathered, whispering about the impossible events they had witnessed. At the center stood Captain Mara Ellison, her uniform still carrying the faint marks of battle. Behind her, holograms flickered images of Ravager ships colliding, of human vessels weaving through impossible fire, of a battlefield turned into chaos and survival. The Chancellor raised his clawed hand for silence. "Captain Ellison," he said, his glowing eyes fixed on her, "you defied orders. You disobeyed the command of the Alliance fleet. Explain yourself. Mara did not flinch. She looked around the chamber, her voice clear and steady. If I had followed orders, Vera the Ninth would be ash. Your fleets fought with perfect formations, with strategies the Ravagers already knew. We chose another way. We chose chaos. And in that chaos, we survived. Her words rippled through the chamber like a spark in dry grass. The karate envoy clicked his mandibles sharply. You risked everything. Your ship could have been destroyed in moments. That is not strategy. That is recklessness. Mara turned her gaze to him. Her dark eyes were calm, but her voice carried steel. On Earth, survival has never been neat. We faced storms, quakes, floods, and wars that came without warning. We never had the luxury of perfect order. To live, we learned to adapt. We learned to turn accidents into opportunities. We learned to fight in ways no one could predict. A murmur spread among the delegates. Some watched her with doubt, but others leaned forward, curious. The HFY envoy, a shifting shadow, wrapped in robes, spoke in its slow, whispering tone. You claim your chaos is strength. Yet chaos is also destruction. How can it be trusted? Mara took a breath. She let her voice soften, carrying not only logic, but emotion. Chaos alone is nothing. But chaos with courage, chaos with hope, becomes something more. When the storm comes, when every plan fails, when fear grips your people, what keeps you moving forward? For humans, it is not calculation. It is will. It is the refusal to give up, even when the path is unclear. She paused, her throat tightening as memories surfaced. She thought of her grandmother telling stories of Earth's wars, of soldiers fighting in trenches without food, of explorers lost in seas who still pressed on. She thought of disasters where neighbors carried one another from the rubble. We are not strong because we are cleverer than you, Mara said softly. We are strong because we do not stop. We fight when logic says we should fall. That is what you saw at Vera. The chamber fell into silence. For the first time, many delegates truly looked at her not as a child among elders, but as something they had never understood. An Alarian admiral broke the silence with a growl. Perhaps it was only fortune. A single battle proves. Little Mara's lips curved in a faint smile. Fortune had nothing to do with it, Admiral. If it did, humanity would have vanished from Earth long ago. There was a heavy stillness, as though the chamber itself was holding its breath. Finally, the Chancellor spoke, his voice slower now, less certain. Your words are unusual. Your victory at Vera cannot be denied, yet your methods remain dangerous. The Alliance cannot afford recklessness. Mara inclined her head, respectful, but unbending. Call it what you will, but the Ravagers are not bound by rules. If you face them with order, you will lose. If you face them with chaos, you may have a chance. Her words lingered long after the council dismissed her. Some left shaking their heads, unwilling to accept that such a young species could teach them anything. Others left thoughtful, troubled by what they had seen and heard. Mara walked alone through. The halls of the Alliance Command were filled with voices, sharp and urgent. The Ravagers had struck again, deeper into Alliance space. 2 systems were already lost, their worlds burning. Entire fleets had been shattered, and yet, in the great council chamber, when the plans were drawn, humanity was not called. Captain Mara Ellison stood in the shadows at the edge of the meeting, her hands folded tightly behind her back. She listened as the admirals of the great races spoke in confident tones, their strategies laid out like pieces on a board. We will form the wall of flame, said Admiral Torak of the Olarians, his crest rising proudly. Our fleets will stretch in layers, forcing the Ravagers into predictable channels. The karate will strike their flanks with precision swarms. Another declared. The HFY will spread shadows to confuse their sensors, whispered the mist-like envoy. Each spoke with certainty, their plans polished by centuries of war. But Mara saw only repetition, patterns, order, the very thing the Ravagers had already learned to tear apart. Finally, Mara stepped forward, her voice calm but unyielding. Your fleets are strong, but you are repeating the same mistakes. The Ravagers will break through again. You need flexibility. You need unpredictability. You need chaos. The council chamber grew still. Then came the laughter, sharp, cruel, echoing off the crystal walls. Admiral Torak sneered openly. Chaos is not strategy, human. You were lucky at Vera, a single. Victory does not make your kind wise. The karate envoy clicked its mandibles. Yes, a storm of fireflies may confuse a predator once, but in the end, they all burn. Mara's hands curled into fists. We did not survive Vera by luck, she said fiercely. We survived because we refused to fight the Ravagers on their terms. If you do not learn, if you do not change, your fleets will be slaughtered again. The Chancellor silenced the hall with a wave of his claw. His glowing eyes narrowed. Captain Ellison, humanity is not yet trusted to lead. You will remain on defense. This battle belongs to the Alliance. The words hit Mara like a blade. She opened her mouth to argue, but then she saw the truth in their faces. They would not listen. Pride blinded them. Arrogance deafened them. When the meeting ended, Mara walked out into the silent corridors of Ardentis Prime. Her boots echoed against the shining floor, her heart heavy with anger. Behind her, the galaxy's greatest powers prepared to march into disaster. Back on the Resolute, her crew waited. Lieutenant Arjun Patel met her at the airlock, his eyes burning with questions. Captain, what did they say? Mara's silence was enough. Arjun's jaw tightened. They won't let us fight, will they? She shook her head. They think we are reckless. They think our victory was chance. Around the bridge table, the officers gathered, voices rising with frustration. They'd rather lose in order than win in chaos. Arjun spat. They don't want us at their side, another said bitterly. They want us forgotten. Mara listened, her heart aching. She knew the truth in their words. And yet, beneath the pain, there was also fire. They can ignore us, she said softly, her voice cutting through the anger. But they cannot stop us from being who we are. Days later, the reports came. The Alliance fleets met the Ravagers in the Sathra expanse. At first, the galaxy celebrated. Great walls of ships stretched across the stars, their weapons blazing in perfect harmony. Admirals sent messages of confidence. Victory seemed certain, but then the messages changed. Confidence turned to confusion. Confusion turned to fear. And finally silence. The Ravagers had learned the patterns. One by one, the great fleets were torn apart. The wall of flame became a burning graveyard. The swarms of the karate were sliced to pieces. Even the shadows of the Kaishe were no shield. The Alliance, proud and ancient, was broken again. On the bridge of the Resolute, Mara listened to the fragmented transmissions. Screams, static, pleas for help. Her crew sat in stunned silence, their faces pale. At last, Arjun turned to her, his voice trembling with both grief and fury. They betrayed us, Captain. They left us behind because of their pride, and now they're dying for it. Mara looked out the viewport, her gaze hard as steel. Then we don't abandon them. Set course for the Sathra expanse. Her crew stared at her in shock. Captain, they told us to stay away. She met their eyes, her voice steady. They may not want us, but if the Alliance falls, Earth will burn next. We fight not because they believe in us, but because we believe in humanity. The engines roared to life. The Resolute and her escorts turned toward the battlefield, where flames already consumed the stars as the ship surged. Forward, Mara whispered to herself, her words a promise carried into the void. They will see. Even in betrayal, even in doubt, We will not break. We are human, and we will not stop. Asterisk the Sethra expanse was a graveyard of stars. Dozens of Alliance ships, once proud and glittering, floated broken and smoking, their hulls torn apart by Ravager fire. The debris drifted like deadly snow, each fragment a reminder of failure. The Resolute moved silently toward the battlefield, cutting through the wreckage with precision. Its small size made it almost invisible, but the crew knew every second mattered. Every choice could mean survival or death. Captain Mara Ellison stood on the bridge, her hands gripping the command rail. Her eyes scanned the field of destruction, noting the positions of enemy ships, debris, and the flickering remnants of the Alliance fleet. Her mind worked faster than any computer, calculating impossible trajectories. Lieutenant Arjun Patel broke the silence. Captain, it's worse than we imagined. The Ravagers have the Alliance trapped. There's no clear path, no safe route. Mara nodded slowly. Then we make our own path. The safest course is not safe. We take the risk others will not. Her words struck the crew like a spark. Each of them felt the truth in it. Humans had always survived by taking impossible risks. It was what made them unpredictably and what made them dangerous to anyone who underestimated them. Prepare the ship, Mara continued. All systems on emergency. Weapons hot but silent. Engines ready to surge at any moment. We are going to slip into the heart of their swarm. The crew moved with urgent precision. Sparks flew from consoles. Alarms screamed warnings, but the human resolve was steady. Outside the viewports, the stars were full of fire and twisted metal. Helm, take us in, Mara ordered, and make it look like we're surrendering. Arjun's eyes widened. Surrender, Captain. Yes. Engines down, shields down, look broken, powerless. They'll think we are dead. The Resolute slowed, drifting among burning wrecks. Ravager ships tore past them, ignoring the small human vessel, certain it was another corpse to drift. In space, Mara's heart pounded. Every second they lingered increased the danger, but this was the human way. Deception, improvisation, risk. Then, with a single command, everything changed. Engage all engines. Weapons fire at my mark. Go. The Resolute roared to life, weaving through the enemy fleet with speed and violence no one expected. Missiles detonated among debris, causing explosions that threw Ravager ships into one another. Their formations, perfected over centuries, collapsed under the onslaught of unpredictable moves. Lieutenant Sophia Lin, weapons officer, shouted over the alarms. We're inside their lines, Captain. Their sensors can't track us. Mara's lips curved into a grim smile. Good. Keep moving. Let them chase ghosts. Every action was calculated to look accidental, but achieve maximum effect. The Resolute spun, ducked, and surged through fire, while the escorts faked panicked maneuvers, drawing Ravager cruisers into collisions. Every blast, every movement, was chaos-perfected. From the edge of the battlefield, Alliance admirals watched, in stunned silence. Their systems predicted failure, but the humans moved beyond prediction. They're rewriting the battle, whispered an Alarian commander. They don't follow patterns, muttered a karate officer. They fight like nothing we have ever seen, said the Keshe envoy. Ah, in its shadowed tone. Back on the bridge of the Resolute, Mara felt the weight of the moment. Behind her, her crew worked tirelessly, following instincts and trust. Fear was present sharp, biting, but it was joined by determination. Arjun glanced at her. Captain, they'll notice soon. If we push too far, we could be annihilated. Mara's eyes burned with resolve. Then we push farther. We have no other choice. We are human. Humans do not retreat when the odds are impossible. Humans turn the storm into opportunity. The Ravagers began to react, their ships breaking off from the formations, trying to trap the humans. But Mara had already predicted their moves. The Resolute weaved, the escorts surged, and the battlefield became a swirling storm of fire and debris. The enemy's precision could not withstand unpredictability. One by one, Ravager cruisers collided, torn apart by human improvisation. Another fleet tried to flank the humans, only to run into a maze of explosions created by the clever use of debris and remaining Alliance wreckage. For the first time, the Ravagers hesitated. Their perfect planning, their years of conquest had not prepared them for chaos. Mara stood tall, feeling both fear and exhilaration. She knew the crew was tired, bruised, and scared, but she also knew they were alive, fighting in a way no species in the galaxy could predict. "Keep the pressure," she ordered. "Every move must confuse them. Every strike must make them doubt. Chaos is our weapon. Fear is theirs." Outside, the stars burned and exploded. The battlefield, a maelstrom of fire and shadows. The humans danced in the center, moving with purpose and The stars over the Sathra expanse were lit with fire. Ravager warships, once terrifyingly organized, now drifted in disarray. The Resolute led the small human squadron deeper into the chaos, weaving through explosions and debris with terrifying precision. Every move was unpredictable, every maneuver calculated to make the enemy falter. Captain Mara Ellison stood at the command rail, her dark eyes scanning the battlefield. The crew followed her lead without hesitation. They had learned to trust her instincts that had kept them alive in impossible situations. Every second mattered. One misstep, one pause, and the humans could be annihilated. "Captain," Lieutenant Arjun Patel said urgently, "the Ravagers are reorganizing. They've spotted our pattern there, trying to trap us in a kill zone." Mara clenched her jaw. "Then we give them a new pattern. Not one they can follow. Not one they can predict. Chaos, Arjun, total chaos." She turned to Lieutenant Sophia Lin, weapons officer. "Prepare the quantum decoys. Fire at my mark. Draw their sensors, lure them into the maze." Sophia's fingers danced across her console. "Quantum decoys ready, Captain. Launching. Now." Outside the viewport, hundreds of glowing holographic ships erupted from the human vessels. Ravager sensors lit up, focusing on the decoys. In moments, their fleet turned, moving toward the illusions with lethal precision. And in that split second, the humans surged, slipping through the gaps the enemy had exposed. The maneuver was bold, dangerous, and utterly human. "Helm, take us through the center of their fleet," Mara shouted. "Weapons, target engines, make them collide with each other." The Resolute dove into the heart of the enemy swarm. Ravager cruisers tried to flank, tried to trap them, but the human ships were unpredictable. Explosions erupted as missiles detonated among the Ravager lines, sending cruisers spinning into one another. The battlefield became a whirlwind of fire, smoke, and confusion. Arjun's voice rose above the alarms. "Captain, their command ship is exposed. If we can take it down, the fleet will collapse." Mara's eyes narrowed. The command ship was massive, protected by layers of smaller cruisers. A direct attack would be suicide, but humans thrived where others feared. "We'll do it," she said softly, almost to herself, "not by force, but by trickery." She turned to Sophia. "Prepare the EMP strike. Not at the hull but at their control systems. We don't destroy them, we blind them." Sophia nodded, her hands steady. The humans worked in silence, a symphony of precision and courage. The Resolute surged forward. Mara's crew fired decoys, feints, and bursts of fire, luring the command ship's defenses into targeting empty space. Then, at the perfect moment, the EMP pulse detonated, sending a wave of interference across the Ravager control systems. Lights on the enemy ship flickered, then went dark. The smaller cruisers, without guidance, collided or drifted helplessly. The Ravagers howled in frustration. Their perfect coordination shattered. Their centuries of conquest had never prepared them for unpredictability on this scale. Mara turned to her crew, her voice calm but resolute. Now, we finish this. Concentrate on the gaps. Force them to fight ghosts. The humans pressed the attack. Missiles, lasers, and energy bursts cut through Ravager lines like a whirlwind. The command ship, still semi-functional, attempted to escape, but Mara anticipated every move. With one final surge, the Resolute and its escorts boxed it in, forcing it to surrender. For the first time, the Ravagers hesitated. They were used to crushing every opponent, leaving no survivors. But the humans had shown them a new type of war. One that could not be predicted, controlled, or defeated by logic alone. On the bridge, Mara allowed herself a moment to breathe. The crew's faces were pale, sweat-streaked, but alive, and more importantly, victorious. Arjun spoke softly, awe in his voice. Captain, we actually did it. We stopped them. Mara's gaze remained on the stars, calm and fierce. We didn't just stop them. We changed the rules. The galaxy will never see war the same way again. They will fear our unpredictability, and that is our greatest weapon. Outside, the remaining Ravager ships fled into the void, leaderless and broken. The human squadron pursued only enough to ensure no immediate threat remained, then regrouped. The battlefield, once a graveyard, now held a quiet triumph. Mara turned to her crew. You've done more than fight. You've shown what humans can do. Courage, imagination, willingness to take impossible risks. That is who we are. That is why the galaxy underestimates us, and why it should never do so again. The crew exchanged glances, hearts still racing. They had faced annihilation, chaos, and betrayal and emerged victorious. Mara allowed herself a small smile. For centuries, humans had been dismissed as fragile, short-lived, and reckless. Today, they had proven that fragility was an illusion. Today, they had danced in fire and emerged stronger. And somewhere in the endless stars, Mara whispered, her voice soft but unwavering. The galaxy can plan all it wants, but humans are chaos. The Sathra expanse was quiet now. Fires from the broken Ravager ships burned faintly in the void, casting red-orange light across drifting debris. The battle had ended not with perfect order, not with strategy, but with chaos. And chaos, today, belonged to humanity. Captain Mara Ellison stood on the bridge of the Resolute, her hands gripping the command rail. Around her, the crew moved with weary precision. Their faces were streaked with soot, sweat, and exhaustion. Their eyes shone with triumph. Lieutenant Arjun Patel leaned over his console, still monitoring the last remnants of the Ravager fleet. Captain, they're retreating. The rest of the Ravagers, they're fleeing. Mara's lips curved into a small, calm smile. Good. Let them go. They will carry the memory of humans with them. The bridge fell silent for a moment. Each crew member felt the weight of what they had accomplished. Against all odds, against centuries of prejudice, against betrayal and overwhelming firepower, they had won. Sophia Lynn, the weapons officer, finally spoke. Her voice was quiet, almost disbelieving. We actually did it. We stopped an entire armada. Mara nodded slowly, letting her gaze drift over the stars. We didn't just stop them, Sophia. We made them realize something they've never understood. Humans don't fight like anyone else. Humans survive where others fail. Humans, she paused, letting the truth settle in the room. Humans turn chaos into strength. The crew exchanged glances, pride swelling in their chests. They had not just survived, they had changed the course of history. Beyond the bridge, the Alliance fleets arrived, wary, cautious, their ships scarred but intact. Admirals who had dismissed the humans now stared at the Resolute with new understanding. Some faces betrayed disbelief, others grudging respect. Admiral Torek's voice, came over the Cums, stiff and unyielding. Human vessel, you acted without permission. Yet, the Ravagers are gone. You saved countless lives. Mara's voice was calm, strong. I acted because it was the right thing to do, Admiral. Not for glory, not for approval. Humans survive by acting, by refusing to wait for permission when the world burns. The silence that followed spoke louder than words. Across the Alliance, the legend of human courage and unpredictability began to spread. Mara allowed herself a moment to think of Eartho Blue Planet in the void, fragile and beautiful, full of people who had always survived against impossible odds. She thought of children who played under storms, of soldiers who pressed on through chaos, of explorers who crossed deserts and oceans and mountains when all reason said they should not. That same spirit now lived in this tiny ship, in this small human squadron, and it had just reshaped a battle that the galaxy thought it understood. Lieutenant Arjun approached her quietly. Captain, the Alliance. They'll see us differently now. Mara shook her head. Some may. Others will always underestimate us. And that is fine. Humans do not need admiration to survive. We only need determination, courage, and each other. The crew nodded, hearts swelling with quiet pride. For generations, humanity had been underestimated. They had been called fragile, reckless, too short-lived to matter in the grand tapestry of the galaxy. And yet, here, they were standing victorious against an enemy that had terrified the galaxy. Sophia Lynn spoke again, her voice full of awe. We did it, Captain. All of us. Every single one. Mara's eyes softened. Yes, every single one. This is not just my victory. It is every human who ever refused to give up. Every human who adapted, survived, and fought when no one else would. We are not defined by fear, failure, or limits. We are defined by what we do when faced with the impossible. The Resolute and its escorts drifted slowly through the expanse, the firelight from destroyed ships fading behind them. A new calm settled across the battlefield, and somewhere beyond the stars, the galaxy was learning a lesson it could not forget, that humans would not bow to pride or fear. They would not follow the rules that others set. They would not be contained by expectation. They would act, survive, and triumph where logic said they could not. Mara took one last look at the stars, her voice barely a whisper, yet carrying across the emptiness of space. The galaxy can plan, predict, and control, but humans will always find a way. The crew around her smiled, some quietly laughing, some wiping tears from their eyes. The stars stretched endlessly before them, a canvas for the humans' next adventure. And as the Resolute prepared to chart a course back to Alliance space, Mara's final thought resonated across the void clear, proud,